After years of negotiation, the agreement, which aims to change the lives of hundreds of millions of Africans, the African Continental Free Trade Area, has come into effect in 2019. But yet, a lot of work remains for businesses to use this great opportunity to change the business culture in Africa. Today, we are at a roundtable discussion hosted by the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce here at the beautiful compound of the International Livestock Research Institute. This business roundtable hopes to create awareness for companies, for businesses, and for business promoters, as well as other stakeholders of African business to implement this agreement. Let's go inside and listen of what these stakeholders are proposing and how African businesses can optimize this potential for reaching 1.4 billion people in Africa.
So please allow me to bring to the stage Mr. Jamel Grib, who is the Director of the AU, Economic Development Trade Division, Industry and Mining. Round of applause, everyone.
So, good morning, and thanks to the Master of Ceremony. I'll try to be a little bit brief, focused in my presentation, the speech. So, Excellencies, distinguished representative of the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, I greet each and every one of you. I'm delighted to add my voice to this important event on the behalf of the African Union Commission to express our views on the African Continental Free Trade Area benefits for business across Africa. At the onset, allow me to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Kebur Genna, the CEO of the Pan-African Chambers of Commerce and Industry, for organizing this event and hosting in this beautiful city of Addis Ababa. PASI events are becoming a unique continental class event and platform for businesses to access the gigantic market of 1.4 billion potential consumers and with a booming middle class of 400 million people. This gives me the opportunity to salute the achievement and call for reinvigorated ties between the EU Commission and the private sector to respond to the global common challenges to build the prosperous Africa we want under Agenda 2063. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa is in a challenging time of its destiny. The COVID-19 pandemic, the current Russia-Ukraine war, and climate change pose unprecedented threat to Africa's sustainable development by creating new risks and exacerbating pre-existing vulnerabilities. These shocks sadly remind us of the extreme vulnerability of our economies, widely exposed to disruption of global supply chain. Growth is back, but at a sluggish rate, 3.8% in 2023, after a rebound of 6.9% in 2020, now following our first recession of minus 1.9% in 2020. Although medium-term projections are on a positive track, growth will remain below the pre-pandemic level and far below the required 7% expected in the long run to achieve the vision and aspiration of the Agenda 2063. Africa is facing these circumstances with the limited financial resources in the context of declining foreign direct investment, official development assistance, and remittances. The financial needs of the continent are estimated to $432 billion to overcome the stress induced by the pandemic alone. To bridge its huge infrastructure gap, there is a need of an additional $100 billion per year. Despite these challenges in a sustaining and high-level growth trajectory, the immense potential of Africa has become tangible and will drive global prosperity in the years to come due to the increasing domestic demand driven mainly by the rising of the middle class, improving the regional business environment, and microeconomic management, public investment, especially in the infrastructure. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on the group pessimists, will be against this new era of Africa time for its economic and social transformation as envisaged under Agenda 2063. The optimists, and I count myself among them, are well aware of the numerous challenges facing Africa, but also of the huge opportunities within the continent. Africa has some of the most abundant natural resources in the world, many of which are yet to be tapped. These include not just minerals and oil, but also bountiful possibilities for clean energy. But natural resources are not Africans' only advantage. While Western countries are shouldering the burden of aging population, Africa is the world's youngest continent. African population is projected to peak to 2.7 billion in 2063 compared to 1 billion in 2010. If appropriate investment in education and training are made to develop the potential of its youth, Africa could become one of the most dynamic and productive of economies with an estimated GDP of over $15 trillion in 2016 from a base of 1.7 trillion in 2010. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me recall ourselves about the historical background of the CFTA. The agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area was signed at the 10th Extraordinary Summit of the AU Assembly on 21st March 2018 in Kigali, Rwanda. The CFTA agreement entered into force on the 30th May 2019. The African Continental Free Trade is one of the 13 flagship projects of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want of the African Union. 54 AU member states have signed and ratified the CFTA agreement as of March 2023. The CFTA, the ASFTA, is the continent's most ambitious integration initiative. The main objective of the CFTA are create a single continental market of goods and services with the free movement of business person and investment, expand intra-Africa across the regional economic communities and the continent in general, enhance the competitiveness and support economic transformation. It builds on and aims to facilitate the implementation of the existing continental initiative, AIDA, the Africa Industry Development Action, the PIDA, the Program Infrastructure Development of Africa, the BIAT, the Boosting Intra-Africa Trade, and the CADEP, the Comprehensive Agriculture Africa Development Program. The establishment of the CFTA, single air market and free trade of the people remain, of course, among the 2063 flagship projects. The CFTA agreement is a framework agreement conferring trade in goods and services, investment, intellectual property, and competition policy. The protocols of trade in goods, trade in services, investment, intellectual property, and as well as dispute settlement from an integrated part are part of the agreement. The protocol on trade in goods and trade in services each have a number of annexes covering substantive disciplines. Phase 1, trade in goods and trade in services are being negotiated on a number of issues. Example, tariff concession, rules of origin of goods, and schedule of specific commitment for services, which are still ongoing. The phase 2 of the negotiation will cover investment competition policy and intellectual property rights. Where are we today in terms of the implementation of the CFTA? The African negotiators embarked on a year-long process in December 2021 to develop the text of the protocol on investment, culminating in a final version that defines the protection, promotion, and facilitation of the intra-African investment. So the phase 1 negotiation on trade in goods and trade in services are complete, while the phase 2, which include the protocol on investment, protocol on and the protocol on competition, is well on course. Further, phase 3 will involve a negotiation for an e-commerce protocol. The protocol on investment of the CFTA drafted was concluded in October 2022 and adopted at the minister level by the ASCFTA Council of Ministers, as well as the Assembly of the Heads of State in its ordinary session scheduled in Feb 2023. In terms of opportunities, CFTA offers huge business opportunities for the private sector, and the African Union Commission is committed to accelerate regional value chain and move away from its specialization on simple export of raw material. Under CFTA, statistics clearly indicate that there is a huge economic opportunity for the private sector in developing Africa agriculture and industrial capabilities. This allows us to harness the potential of an integrated market of 1.4 billion consumers, with high growth potential to reach 2.7 million consumers by 2050. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa estimates that CFTA will boost intra-Africa trade by 52% by 2022. A report of the World Bank anticipates that the CFTA could lift 30 million Africans out of the extreme poverty, boost the income of nearly 70 million people, and generate 450 billion in income by 2035. On January 13, 2022, the CFTA took a major step toward its objective with the establishment of the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, which allow payment among companies operating in Africa to done in a global, any local currency. The scale of the imports demonstrate that demand exists. If a vibrant private agribusiness and industrial sector can be stimulated to service it. Available data suggests that by reducing food imports, the private sector can invest in key commodities as well as processed goods and take advantage of more than $100 billion in revenue per annum, while delivering food security and broad-based income growth. Since the last decade, there is an emerging consensus regarding the critical role that the private sector is supposed to play in accelerating industrialization and structural transformation in Africa during the next decade and beyond under the global framework of Agenda 2063. Leveraging the capacity of private sector to drive the economic transformation process is paramount to Africa's industrialization and economic diversification agenda. In that regard, the CFTA is endeavoring to create an enabling business environment for private sector to thrive, to boost productivity through targeted policy reform and investment. In this context of the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, trade liberalization and drive competition in a single market and foster innovation, in order to take advantage of the single market and increase global market access for African products, African countries have embraced regional integration through accelerated trade facilitation as a means for increased trade, investment, and economic prosperity. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the meeting presents a timely opportunity to examine the challenges facing the private sector within the continent and to discuss possible remedies to support quality growth and job creation under the CFTA. It also enables us to study how to turn some constraints into real business opportunities and encourage domestic investment of African private sector actors in key socio-economic transformation sectors such as agriculture and agro-industry. Building on the experience of our member states, the task of the African Union Commission is to support member states creating the right investment and business climate for strengthening the role of the private sector in achieving socio-economic transformation. In that spirit, to the investor here present, I would like to deliver one powerful message. You will be the right to have faith. You'll be the right to have faith, believe, to invest in Africa. The future of Africa growth depends on its ability to strategically onboard the private sector in the industrial and development processes. In the current context of Africa economic transformation under Agenda 2063, The need for better engagement of private sector industrialization is required. As part of their commitment, the African Union Commission will continue working closely with member states and the private sector to help developing and implement policies in support of the private sector transformation. Building on past achievement and lessons and taking account of international experience, the CFTA proposes a strategic framework for strengthening the role of the private sector in acceleration, industrialization, and economic diversification to achieve inclusive and sustainable growth. On this note, I wish you fruitful deliberation and thank you for your kind attention.